You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. Have you ever asked yourself, why now? Why does a certain message find you not a second earlier, not a day too late, but in this precise moment? Perhaps it's not just a coincidence. Perhaps it's a summons. If you're here listening, not just with your ears, but with that quiet ache beneath your ribs, it's because something inside you has begun to stir. Maybe you haven't told anyone yet. Maybe you can't quite name it, but it's there, that subtle tremor beneath the surface of your everyday life. The whisper that says, there's more. More than the routines that numb you, more than the explanations you've outgrown, more than the roles you've been taught to play in a world that rewards sleepwalkers and punishes those who dare to wake up. This video is not for everyone, and that's not arrogance. It's precision. Like sacred texts once hidden behind temple walls, this message only reveals itself when your inner alignment is ready to receive it. And readiness doesn't mean perfection. It means presence, a deep willingness to look inward, to feel, to question, and maybe for the first time to remember. Because the truth is, you didn't just find this video. In a way, it found you. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence that defies logic but resonates through every cell of your being. Neuroscientist Jacobo Grinberg described it as resonance with the formational matrix, a subtle field of infinite potential that responds not to what you say, but to what you are. If that language feels foreign, don't worry. By the end of this journey, it will feel like home. You see, ancient initiates didn't chase knowledge the way we chase information today. They purified the vessel first, the self, because they knew wisdom isn't something you accumulate, it's something you become. And the moment you're ready to become it, the universe responds. Not always with clarity, but with symbols, with dreams, with an aching in your chest that refuses to be silenced, with a sudden moment of stillness in a noisy life. Have you ever felt like reality was shifting behind the curtain of your daily routine, as if something invisible was organizing moments just for you? A song on the radio, a conversation overheard, a number that keeps repeating? That's not just your imagination. That's alignment flickering into coherence. And it's how the soul speaks when the mind grows quiet enough to listen. Modern life trains us to outsource truth, to experts, to screens, to algorithms. But what if the answers you've been seeking aren't out there at all? What if they're inside of you, veiled not by secrecy but by readiness? What if the world only becomes clear when you finally become still? Ingo Swann, one of the CIA's most researched psychics, once said, "The human mind is structured to perceive far more than we allow it to." And the great mystics knew this centuries before neuroscience began to catch up. From the Tibetan Book of the Dead to the Vedic Upanishads, the message was always the same. The outer world is only a mirror. The true transformation happens within. And that brings us here, to this very moment where something within you is daring to step forward, not toward more noise, but toward deeper silence. Not toward answers, but toward awareness. This isn't a video you just watch, it's one you remember. It's the kind that feels like a dream you had long ago, one you've been trying to recall your whole life. And as we begin this journey together, I won't ask you to believe. I'll simply ask you to feel, because the truth that's meant for you doesn't convince, it resonates. And now, let me ask you something. Have you ever sensed deep in your bones that the life you've been living is only the surface? That behind your daily thoughts, there's an entire architecture of meaning pulsing quietly, waiting for you to notice? What if every moment of confusion, every stretch of loneliness, every strange coincidence was never random, but part of a larger unveiling? What if reality wasn't something you lived in, but something you were helping to generate? In the chapters to come, we'll explore these questions, not with the goal of answering them once and for all, but with the sacred intention of deepening the mystery. We'll begin by asking, why do certain people awaken while others remain numb? What inner shift marks the moment a soul begins to see behind the veil? Then we'll connect this to your real life, the memories you've buried, the emotions you've ignored, the patterns you keep repeating. Because awakening doesn't come through fantasy, it comes through the raw, uncomfortable honesty of presence. Next, we'll move into empathy, emotion, and the unseen war between your higher self and your inherited conditioning. Why does awakening feel so lonely? Why does sensitivity become both a gift and a burden? And finally, we'll spiral upward toward transformation. You'll see why nothing you've been through was wasted, why synchronicity is real, and why the universe has been speaking to you in symbols all along. So stay with me. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror, a key, a beginning. And if you feel something stirring in you already, you're ready. Now, let's begin. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Marcel Proust. Let's begin with a question that has haunted mystics, philosophers, and seekers for millennia. What is reality, really? You see, most people wake up each assuming the world they see is fixed, objective, and external. A world of events, deadlines, traffic, weather, other people's moods, all seemingly outside of their control. But have you ever paused and asked, is that the full picture or just the version I've been taught to perceive? The first hook of awakening doesn't arrive with fireworks, it begins with discomfort. A small crack in the shell of certainty, a strange deja vu, a persistent question, is this all there is? And in that moment, something profound stirs within you, not a desire to escape life, but to see it as it truly is. What if I told you that reality is not a static container you live inside, but a mirror that responds to your own vibration? That every moment, every smile, delay, conflict, coincidence is not just happening to you, but through you. This isn't just spiritual poetry, it's quantum mechanics, it's neuroscience, and it's ancient wisdom all whispering the same truth. You are not a passive observer, you are a conscious participant. Jacobo Grinberg, the brilliant neuropsychologist who mysteriously disappeared after decades of studying consciousness, proposed something radical, that reality is shaped by what he called the formational field, a matrix of pure possibility that bends and reconfigures itself based on the coherence of your inner state. In simpler terms, your beliefs don't just color your world, they construct it. Now, pause with me. What would that mean for your life right now, if it were true? What would it mean about the days that repeat in frustration? About the dreams you keep postponing? About the patterns you can't seem to break? Most people never ask these questions. They're too busy keeping up with the surface. But something brought you here. Something inside you is ready to stop accepting reality as a rigid script, and start treating it like a co-creation. Let's deepen this. Carl Jung once warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And this is precisely where our journey must begin, by turning the lens inward. Because fate, as it turns out, might not be as fixed as we were told. Have you noticed how your world subtly shifts when your state of mind shifts? How one day everything flows effortlessly and the next feels like swimming in tar? That's not random. That's feedback. Your consciousness, your emotional, mental, and energetic state acts like a tuning fork, and reality, in all its mystery, echoes back. Ingo Swann, a remote viewer who worked with intelligence agencies, believed the human mind had latent perceptual powers far beyond our education systems. He spoke of perceptual permission, the idea that most people only see what they've been taught is possible. But the awakened ones, they begin to question that permission. They begin to see more, not because they're special, but because they've stopped assuming. So let me ask again, what if reality isn't something you're stuck inside, but something you're participating in, even now, with every thought you entertain, every belief you silently carry, every emotion you suppress or express? This chapter isn't here to hand you answers. It's here to spark a deeper rebellion, the kind that begins quietly in the heart and eventually changes everything. Because once you truly suspect that your reality might be an echo of your own energy, you can never unsee it. This is where the old map ends, the one that said life happens to you. This is where a new map begins, one that says life responds through you. But don't worry, this isn't about guilt or blame. This is about radical liberation, the power to reshape the dream you're living inside. And the first step toward that liberation is curiosity. Let that be your guide as we move forward. Curiosity, not certainty, because certainty shuts the door. Curiosity opens it wide. In the chapters to come, we'll explore how your unconscious beliefs, many inherited from childhood or culture, continue shaping your outer world. We'll look at how emotions like shame, fear, and longing, when unacknowledged, become the hidden architects of your experience. And more importantly, we'll discover how to reclaim your role as the sculptor of your own field. Not through control, but through coherence. Not by forcing outcomes, but by aligning with your truth. Because here's the paradox: the more you try to manipulate reality from the outside, the more stuck you feel. But the moment you begin tuning your inner signal, the more reality begins to rearrange itself effortlessly around you. One shift in belief, one surrendered emotion, one pause before a reaction. These seem like nothing, but they are sacred. They are how the veil begins to thin. So I invite you now, not to believe, but to observe. Notice how your world responds when you shift your presence. Try it, even for a day. Speak with intentionality. Listen more than you plan. Ask deeper questions. Suspend judgment. And just watch how the world softens, mirrors, and begins to reveal itself as a living conversation. Because the truth is, the moment you suspect that reality is interactive is the moment your life begins to change forever. And that, dear seeker, is where the next chapter begins. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. It's one thing to explore the nature of reality through mystical theories and sacred texts, but it's another to feel it show up unmistakably in your everyday life. So let's bring it down to earth. Let's talk about what this means for you, for your relationships, for your career, for the silent battles you fight when no one's looking. Because the truth is, you don't need to look to the stars to see the matrix. Your life already reveals it. Let's begin with something simple: your relationships. Think of the last time you felt unseen, maybe by a partner, a friend, or even a parent. That aching sense that no matter what you said, something essential about you just wasn't landing. Now pause. Was it really about the other person, or were they reflecting something even deeper? An old wound, a buried belief that says, I'm too much, or worse, I'm not enough. You see, the people in our lives often serve as mirrors. Not always conscious ones, but energetic ones. If you carry the vibration of unworthiness, you'll unconsciously gravitate toward those who confirm it. If you fear abandonment, you'll attract those who eventually leave, not because you deserve it, but because reality responds to the story your energy keeps broadcasting. This is not blame. This is revelation. Because the moment you recognize it, the pattern begins to unravel. You start to see it wasn't them. It was the wound beneath the surface, unhealed, unspoken, quietly scripting your connections. Now let's talk about work, your career, your calling, your contribution to the world. How often have you accepted less than you deserve? Settled for a job that drained you? Stayed quiet in meetings where you had something powerful to say? And why? Because deep down a voice said, play it safe. Don't be too visible. Don't make waves. That voice is ancient. It was shaped by your upbringing, your culture, even the traumas of past generations. Neuroscience now confirms what mystics always knew: that unprocessed emotional imprints don't just live in your mind, they shape your entire nervous system. They dictate your risk tolerance, they sculpt your decisions, they color your expectations. And when you operate from those unconscious settings, life starts to feel like it's happening on repeat. Different jobs, same frustrations. Different cities, same loneliness. Different partners, same heartbreak. The details shift, but the pattern remains. So here's the uncomfortable question: what if the common denominator is you? Not in a way that condemns, but in a way that empowers. Because if you're the source of the pattern, then you also hold the key to changing it. That's the gift. That's the pivot point. Let's go deeper. Think about your money story. Do you believe abundance is natural or something you must grind for, beg for, sacrifice for? Were you raised hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees or rich people are greedy? Those aren't just phrases, they're codes, embedded beliefs that dictate what you allow yourself to receive. And reality, like a loyal servant, obeys. Jacobo Grinberg believed that the informational matrix responds to inner coherence, not wishes, not words, but alignment. That means you can say, I want wealth, but if your nervous system is humming with lack, fear, or guilt, the field mirrors that instead. This isn't magic, this is physics. Emotional energy is real. It shapes behavior, body language, tone, even posture. And all of it signals to the world what to echo back. So if your outer world keeps handing you scarcity, disrespect, confusion, don't just fix the external, look inward. Ask, what signal am I sending out without even realizing it? The truth is, Most of your daily life is a reflection of your unconscious beliefs. And these beliefs aren't evil, they're protective. At some point, they helped you. The play small belief helped you survive rejection. The don't speak up pattern protected you from punishment. The love means self sacrifice script was your way of keeping connection alive when you were young. But what once protected you is now confining you. And until you examine those scripts, you will continue to recreate a life that matches them. Not because you're broken, but because your system is loyal to what it knows, to what it believes is safe. So here's the radical shift. Healing isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about updating what's outdated. Just like software, your beliefs need version upgrades. You're not the same person you were at 7 years old, but your nervous system might still be running the same fear. Your relationships might still be following the same abandoned inner child. Your finances might still be echoing the survival state you inherited from your parents. And yet, awareness changes everything. The moment you see the matrix, when you realize that the frustrating patterns in your life are not punishment but feedback, you begin to reclaim your power. This is not passive spirituality. This is active transformation. Start small. Start small. Journal the last 3 emotional triggers you experienced. What belief did they expose? What reaction did they provoke? What deeper wound might be asking to be seen? Then experiment. Instead of reacting from the wound, respond from awareness, even once. That one moment of conscious choice sends a ripple through your field. It teaches the matrix. I'm ready to create from wholeness, not from fear. And slowly, quietly, your life begins to shift. Not because you forced it, but because you recalibrated the signal. As we step into the next chapter, we'll dive even deeper, not into ideas, but into emotion itself, into why sensitivity is so often misunderstood, and why, for the awakened soul, it is not a curse, but a compass. So if you've ever been called too emotional, too intense, too deep, get ready, because in the next chapter, we'll explore why your depth was never the problem. It was always the invitation. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi. Let's pause. Take a breath, not to move forward, but to arrive, right here. Because what comes next may not be easy, but it might just be exactly what your soul has been waiting to hear. Let me ask you something quietly, intimately. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the tension, even before a word was spoken? Have you ever been overwhelmed by beauty that no one else seemed to notice? A song, a tree, a tear held too long behind someone's smile? Have you ever been told you're too sensitive, as if your depth was a flaw that needed to be corrected? If you're nodding right now, not just in your head, but in your heart, then you already know. You don't just see the world, you feel it. And for most of your life, that gift likely felt like a burden. You might have spent years trying to toughen up, to be normal, to silence the inner storm that no one else seemed to notice. You might have been the one holding space for others while quietly drowning in your own unspoken ache. Maybe you were the child who read the room before you could even read words, the teen who smiled through panic, the adult who gave too much, too fast, hoping someone might finally see the real you underneath. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. And adaptation is a form of brilliance, born not from fragility, but from emotional intelligence so advanced that even you forgot to honor it. Carl Jung once wrote, "A person who has not passed through the inferno of their passions has never overcome them." What he meant is this: depth isn't earned through comfort, it's born in the fire. And if your life has felt like one emotional wildfire after another, it's not because you're broken. It's because your soul came here to burn away the false until only truth remains. Let's be honest. This world isn't built for sensitive people. It rewards performance over presence, noise over nuance. It labels emotions as irrational. It praises hustle over healing. And in that kind of world, deep feelers often learn to wear masks of competence, of control, of caretaking, just to survive. But here's what most people don't realize. Empaths, intuitives, deep souls, they don't just absorb energy, they transmute it. You've likely been doing it for years without knowing, soaking in other people's sorrow, silently translating pain into compassion, holding the unspoken in your body like a tuning fork, vibrating with the ache of those around you, and yet never being fully seen yourself. That is trauma, but it is also sacred. And now, the invitation is this. What if you stopped treating your sensitivity like a flaw and started honoring it as a form of ancient wisdom encoded in your nervous system? Modern neuroscience supports this. Studies now show that highly sensitive people have heightened mirror neurons, making them more attuned to facial expressions, subtle cues, even emotional vibrations. In other words, your nervous system was wired for depth, for resonance, for truth. And what happens when someone like that suppresses their gift to fit into a world built on denial? They get sick, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically, because the soul rebels when it's ignored. Have you noticed that? The anxiety that doesn't go away with logic, the fatigue that isn't solved by sleep, the chronic tightness in your chest, like a truth trying to be spoken but swallowed every day. You're not imagining it, you're sensing it. Your body is speaking the language your mind forgot how to translate. And the first step in healing is permission. Permission to feel without justification, to cry without apology, to walk away without guilt, to honor your no without explanation, to value your presence even when no one else does. Because here's the truth the world rarely says aloud: your depth is not a liability, a map, a mirror that reveals what others are not yet ready to see. You weren't meant to fit in, you were meant to illuminate. But you can't illuminate others if you keep dimming yourself. You can't hold space for truth while denying your own. And you can't continue to absorb everyone's chaos without first tending to your own clarity. So let me ask you gently, what have you been carrying for too long? Whose pain have you mistaken for your own? What part of yourself have you silenced in the name of being easy to love? And more importantly, when was the last time someone asked you that? This is the moment to ask it of yourself. Because empathy, true, sacred empathy, is not just about feeling others. It's about feeling yourself fully enough that your boundaries become clear, your presence becomes healing, and your voice becomes medicine. In ancient traditions, empaths were not dismissed. They were trained, honored, protected, because their gift was rare and their role vital. Ingo Swann believed that the deeper your sensitivity, the more access you had to intuitive realms. He called it the front edge of perception, where the physical and the subtle meet, and your body, your emotions, they are the gateway, not your enemy. So if you've spent your life being told to calm down, lighten up, grow thicker skin, I want you to know something radical. You were never meant to toughen. You were meant to tune in, and now you are. That's why you're here. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when you finally stop suppressing and start expressing. When you stop adapting to survive and begin living to expand, because your sensitivity is only the beginning, there is power waiting beneath it. Let's step into it together. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. There comes a moment in every soul's journey that is quiet but seismic. It doesn't look like a grand revelation. There are no trumpets, no dramatic lightning bolts from the heavens. In fact, it usually happens in the most ordinary of moments: folding laundry, sitting in traffic, staring at your reflection a little longer than usual. And then it hits you. I don't need anyone's permission to become myself. Not your parents, not your partners, not society's, not even your past selves, just yours. That realization, that sacred inner yes, is the crack where light floods in. It's the beginning of all true transformation, not the kind that's performative or trendy, but the kind that rearranges your cells, your choices, your future. Up until this point, maybe you've been waiting for things to get better, for people to change, for clarity to arrive, for the pain to stop, for a sign. But here's the secret: you are the sign. The permission you've been seeking from life is already pulsing inside of you, waiting to be claimed. For years, maybe decades, you've adapted. You've filtered your truth, dimmed your light to avoid judgment, played small to stay safe, chose silence over expression, survival over sovereignty. But survival isn't enough anymore, is it? There's a deeper longing now, raw, holy, untamed. A call not just to feel better, but to become whole. That's the moment we're in now. The moment where your pain is no longer just a wound, it's a doorway. Let's name it together. That heartbreak, it taught you what real connection should feel like. That job that drained you, it revealed the value of meaning. That friendship that faded when you started growing, it showed you who was committed to your past, not your future. That restlessness you can't explain, It's your soul refusing to settle for imitation when it came here for authenticity. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation, the unfolding of one's truest self, often begins with crisis, not as punishment, but as a spiritual rupture. A moment when the persona you've worn begins to crack under the weight of who you really are. And here's the beauty of that crack: it lets the truth seep out. But for many, this moment is terrifying. Why? Because change demands the death of something old, a version of you that kept you safe, liked, approved of, even if it was never real. But let me ask you gently, is it truly safe if it costs you your joy? Is it really secure if it muffles your voice? Is it still love if it requires you to betray yourself? This is the moment where many turn back, where the mind starts whispering, don't rock the boat, be grateful for what you have, don't be dramatic. But deep down, you know, the boat has been sinking for years. So this is your turning point, not to fight harder, but to surrender deeper. To no longer chase the life you think you should live, but to step fully into the one that's been waiting for you to own it. And that doesn't require a 10-step plan. It doesn't require an Instagram-worthy breakthrough. It only requires one thing: radical self-permission. The willingness to say, I'm allowed to change. I'm allowed to leave what no longer fits. I'm allowed to disappoint people if it means honoring my truth. I'm allowed to not know where this leads and trust it anyway. This isn't rebellion. This is returning to the self that was always there, buried beneath conditioning, expectation, and survival mode. Let me remind you of something ancient. In every indigenous tradition, in every mystery school, initiation didn't begin with knowledge. It began with loss, a shedding, a symbolic death. Only then could the seeker receive sacred truth. And what is more sacred than this, you no longer need to be who you were taught to be. You came here to remember, to unravel, to reclaim. Jacobo Grinberg believed that once you align your inner frequency, the matrix responds immediately, intimately. But that alignment begins with truth, not perfection, not positivity, truth. So if your truth right now is rage, exhaustion, grief, honor it. If your truth is, I don't know who I am without the masks, breathe into that. Because clarity doesn't come from certainty, it comes from courage. And the most courageous thing you can do right now is to stop waiting, to stop apologizing for existing exactly as you are, to stop asking the world, am I enough? And start whispering to yourself, I already am. That's the rupture. That's the revolution. And it's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's real. And realness, that's magnetic. That's what shifts timelines, bends reality, transforms everything. So if you feel the fire rising in you now, the quiet trembling in your chest, the part of you that's both terrified and ready, that's the signal. You're crossing a threshold, not because the world changed, but because you did. And what comes next is not a new you, it's the original you, finally unmasked. In the next chapter, we'll explore what it looks like to live from that unmasked self, not as a performance, but as a way of being. You'll see how integration becomes your superpower and how to walk this new path without losing your softness, your soul, or your sovereignty. But for now, let this truth settle. You never needed permission from anyone else. You only ever needed it from you. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Rumi. So now what? You've remembered the pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You've stopped seeking permission and started reclaiming power. You've crossed the threshold. The old masks are cracking, the old story unraveling, and here you are, raw, honest, free, and maybe just a little bit unsure. That's perfect. Because this next part, the part where you actually live from the self you've reclaimed, this is where the real magic happens. It doesn't happen on mountaintops or meditation cushions. It happens in your kitchen when you choose to cook with love instead of rushing. It happens in conversations when you listen fully instead of planning your reply. It happens when you look in the mirror and say, I'm enough, not as an affirmation, but as an embodied truth. This is the sacred art of living awake. And contrary to what some might think, it's not about being perfect, positive, or even peaceful all the time. It's about being real, present, whole. You've probably heard the term alignment before, thrown around like a hashtag or wellness slogan. But what does it really mean? Alignment isn't a state you force, it's a frequency you return to. It's when your inner world and your outer actions are in sync, when you say yes and mean it, When you say no and honor it, when your thoughts, your truth, and your choices walk together side by side. That's integrity. And integrity is the quiet superpower of the awakened soul. Carl Jung believed that true wholeness required the integration of shadow and light, not denying our messiness, but embracing it. Living as a whole being means no part of you gets left behind. Not the fear, not the fire, not the softness you were told to hide. So, what does this look like practically? It looks like waking up and asking, what does my soul need today? Instead of just, what do I need to get done? It looks like building rituals of slowness in a world obsessed with speed. Lighting a candle not for show, but to remind yourself that your presence is sacred. Taking 3 conscious breaths before entering a room. Saying thank you for your food, not out of habit, but out of reverence. It also means choosing truth over comfort. Not ghosting your emotions. Not abandoning your body when the anxiety comes. Not shrinking when your power threatens someone else's illusion. Because living present isn't soft, it's radical. In a world where distraction is currency, presence is rebellion. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more present you become, the more expansive life feels. Time slows down, colors deepen, synchronicities multiply, your intuition sharpens, your decisions become clearer, not because they're easier, but because you trust yourself more. This is what Einstein meant when he said, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. When you live anchored in the now, you begin to access a different kind of time, not chronological, but kairos, sacred timing, flow. And in that space, even the most mundane moment becomes a portal. Washing dishes becomes a meditation, a walk becomes a ceremony, a goodbye becomes a sacred closing, not an escape, because you're finally here, in your body, in your truth, in your life. But let's be honest, presence isn't always pleasant. To live awake means you feel more. You'll notice the tension in a room others ignore. You'll feel the ache in someone's voice that they're not ready to name. You'll see through the performance, the pretense, the projection. That can be lonely, even painful. But it's also holy, because now you get to choose. You're no longer dancing to someone else's song. You're listening for your own rhythm. And each step, each breath, each choice that honors that rhythm becomes an act of revolution. Jacobo Grinberg once said that the universe bends toward coherent fields, inner states that are in harmony, not in conflict. And coherence starts with choosing consistency over chaos. So choose to pause before reacting, to name what you feel without needing to explain it, to walk away from what depletes even if it once defined you, to surround yourself with those who mirror your growth, not your wounds, to love not as performance but as presence. This is the life that emerges after awakening, not a life without pain, but a life without pretending. You begin to live inside your own skin instead of trying to fit into someone else's. You start making decisions not from fear of lack, but from a sense of inner abundance. You begin noticing beauty in places you never looked before, not because life got better, but because you did. And perhaps most miraculously, you stop needing so many signs because your own body becomes the compass, your emotions become data, your energy becomes the map, and the divine, it starts speaking through you, not just to you. In the next chapter, we'll close this sacred journey, not by ending it, but by honoring how far you've come. We'll speak to your future self, the one who walks this path with grace, trust, and the quiet knowing that this was never just a video, it was a remembering. But for now, pause, breathe, and arrive, because this is what it means to live awakened. Fully here, fully you, fully now. If you've made it this far, take a breath, not to move forward, but to arrive fully, deeply, right here. Because this wasn't just a video, it was a remembering of the part of you that always knew deep down that your sensitivity was never weakness, that your intensity was not a flaw to be corrected, but a signal that your soul was built for something more, that your inner knowing, no matter how inconvenient, was always telling you the truth. You didn't imagine it. You didn't exaggerate it. You sensed it, and now you've named it. Throughout this journey, we've explored the unseen architecture of the rare mind, one built not for fitting in, but for seeing deeply. We've walked through the fog of conditioning, the weight of silence, the ache of suppressed truth, and into a new space of clarity, a new way of being. And each chapter wasn't just information, it was initiation. You've been initiated into your own wholeness. not as something you earned, but as something you remembered was always yours. Maybe for the first time in years, you felt seen, not by me, not by the screen, but by yourself. That's the moment the real shift begins. Because once you see yourself clearly, you stop waiting for the world to validate what you now embody. You walk differently, speak differently, love differently, not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally living from truth. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And you, by staying here, by breathing through this, by listening not just with your mind, but with your soul, you've answered the invitation. Now the path forward is yours to shape. You don't need to know what's next. You just need to be present enough to meet it. So here's my invitation to you. Leave a comment with the word aligned if something in this message resonated, if you felt that quiet yes inside. It might seem small, but that one word could help someone else feel a little less alone on their path too. If you found clarity, comfort, or courage here, subscribe so you don't walk this journey alone. We're building something sacred here, a space for deep souls to breathe, remember, and rise. And if this video touched you, share it. Not for numbers, but because someone you love might be one whisper away from their own remembering. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not too late, you are becoming. And the next message, it will come when the universe knows you're ready. Until then, stay soft, stay wild, stay you.